Welcome to Tunacheki's Africa Year in Review. Join us as we look at some notable news, events, and stories that took place during the year. January. Ethiopia. Ethiopia inaugurates state-of-the-art public library. Early this year, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed inaugurated Abehot Library in Addis Ababa, one of Africa's largest public libraries, which can accommodate over 2,000 readers at a time. During the inauguration ceremony, Abiy stated that Abehot Library is the key to unlocking the nation's many untold histories and facilitating ways to create wealth. The library covers an area of 19,000 square meters and can hold 1.4 million books. The library also has over 240,000 electronic books and 300,000 research papers. Nigeria. Nearly 100 Nigerian hostages were rescued after 2 months of captivity. Nearly 100 hostages, most of them women and children, were rescued in January, more than 2 months after they were abducted by armed groups in northwest Nigeria. Among the 97 freed hostages were 19 babies and more than a dozen children. February. Africa-wide. African Union to open mission in Beijing. The African Union in early February announced that it will open a permanent mission in Beijing in what could signal intent to strengthen ties with the continent's biggest trading partner. Heads of state and governments gathered in Ethiopia's capital Addis Ababa to endorse a proposal by the Council of Ministers, the body of foreign ministers, and member states, which had asked for the establishment of a permanent mission to directly engage with China. March. Africa-wide. Africans pushed back and stranded in Ukraine while escaping Russian-Ukraine conflict. In early March, in the onset of the Russian-Ukraine conflict, African nationals, mostly students, accused Ukrainian security forces of stopping them from boarding trains headed to the border regions. Videos shared on social media also showed Ukrainian border forces pushing African nationals as they attempted to leave Ukraine. Africa-wide. Foreign interests behind the rise in increasing coups in Africa. The president of Ghana, who is also the chair of West African Regional Bloc ECOWAS, in March said that there is an international dimension to the spate of military coups in Africa. Nana Akufo-Addo told an African Union forum that some foreign entities regard coups in Africa as a means of enhancing their regional ambition. He said outside influences were behind disinformation campaigns undermining the authority of governments in the continent and instigating opposition protests. March. Kenya. Ukraine embassy asks Kenyans for financial help. In late March, Ukraine embassy in Kenya called for financial support from Kenyans and other well-wishers as the conflict with Russia continued. Through a statement released on March 31st, the embassy reached out to those willing to support the country to make their donations, which would help the country recover from the impact of the war. April. Rwanda. Rwanda jails Chinese national for torturing mine workers. A Chinese national was sentenced to 20 years in jail in April for torturing local mine workers in Rwanda after a video showing him whipping a man tied to a post went viral on social media. Sun Shujun, the manager of a mine in the west of the country, was convicted along with an accomplice following his arrest. Mali. Mali authorities permanently withdraw French media licenses. The High Authority for Communication of Mali in late April announced that it is permanently suspending French media outlets Radio France International and France 24 two of the most listened news outlets in the West African country. This was the first time that Mali's government had withdrawn the operation license of foreign media. The government had announced a temporary suspension for the two media outlets which it accused of reporting false news and destabilizing the country. UN peacekeepers force MONUSCO leaves Butembo base after losing public support. The United Nations Peacekeeping Force in the DRC, MONUSCO, on 23rd of April, started evacuating its base in the eastern town of Butembo. Local civil society actors expressed that they felt a sense of satisfaction and congratulated the population who mobilized as one to demand the unconditional withdrawal of this contingent. May. Mali. Mali breaks off from defense accord with France. Mali's military government in early May announced that it was breaking off from its defense accord with former colonial ruler France, condemning flagrant violations of its national sovereignty by the French troops there. The government cited multiple instances of French forces having violated the country's airspace. The military government also referred to the June 2021 decision by France to end joint operations with Malian forces. Tensions between France and the military government in Mali, which seized power in August of 2020, have been rising for some time. South Africa. South Africa names the first female Deputy Chief Justice. For the first time in history, South Africa reached a turning point in accelerating transformation in the judiciary. This time, Mandisa Maya, who was notably the first woman to lead the Supreme Court of Appeal as Deputy President and President, became the first woman to be appointed Deputy Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court of South Africa. June. East Africa. East Africa leaders agree on regional force to quell DR Congo crisis. In June, East African leaders agreed to send in a regional force to try to end fighting in the east of the DRC and called for an immediate ceasefire. The East African Community, which Congo joined in May, called on local armed groups to join a political process to resolve their grievances or be handled militarily. West Africa. ECOWAS pushes the launch of single currency to 2027. President of the Economic Community of West African States Commission, Mr. Jean-Claude Brou, in late June, disclosed that the community has resumed convergence to launch of the ECOWAS single currency ECO to 2027. Brou made this known while delivering reports of the ECOWAS Commission before the ECOWAS Parliament during the ongoing 2022 First Ordinary Session of the Parliament in Abuja. July. West Africa. ECOWAS Court declares Nigeria's Twitter ban unlawful. On 14th July, in a huge win for human rights, the Community Court of Justice of the Economic Community of West African States declared that Nigeria's 7-month Twitter ban was unlawful. While the blocking initiated by President Muhammadu Buhari in June 2021 was lifted in January, the court held that it violated the freedom of expression of the people of Nigeria. The court required the government to take steps to ensure it does not repeat similar acts of censorship in the future. August. Africa-wide. African countries eye 2023 to start generating nuclear energy. At least 7 African countries announced that they were at various stages commissioning, shopping for vendors, and mapping appropriate sites in the rollout of nuclear power plants, as majority eye 2030 as a start date for generating electricity from nuclear energy. September, Africa-wide. Dutch government to launch $204 million slavery apology fund. The Dutch government in early September announced that it was planning to apologize for its historic role in slave trade and set up a $204 million US slave fund for projects that aim to raise awareness about the legacy of slavery. The fund was to be announced after the nation officially apologized for its role in slavery by the end of the year. Africa-wide, Senegal Macky Sall delivers a list of striking African demands at the 77th United Nations General Assembly. Macky Sall, the president of Senegal and chair of the African Union, on September 20th, sent a direct message to his fellow world leaders at the 77th United Nations General Assembly. He stated that Africa does not want to be the battleground for a proxy war between nations on opposing sides of the Russian-Ukraine war. Sall, in his speech, also reminded his colleagues that Africa needs 2 permanent seats on the Security Council and, in addition, a G20 seat in order to overcome the reluctance and deconstruct the narrative that persists in confining Africa to the margins of decision-making circles. October, Uganda. Uganda slams European Union criticism of mega oil project. Ugandan ministers slammed European Union's criticism of a mega oil project in early October. The project, which includes drilling in a national park, ran into strong opposition from activists and environmental groups. The $10 billion agreement was signed early this year to develop Ugandan oil fields and ship the crude oil through a 1,445-kilometer pipeline to Tanzania's Indian Ocean port of Tanga. Ugandan's Deputy Speaker, Thomas Tayebwa, reacted angrily to the European Union Parliament resolution, stating that the projects were approved by the Parliament of Uganda, the Parliament of a sovereign country, and anything to do with challenging the approval is an affront to the independence and sovereignty of the country. Ethiopia. Ethiopian government and Tigray rebels set to begin peace talks. Representatives of the Ethiopian government and the rebel forces in the country's Tigray region arrived in South Africa on 24th October for their first formal peace talks, a much-anticipated effort to resolve the almost 2-year civil war that has ravaged Africa's second most populous nation. The mediation, led by the African Union, saw new urgency because the conflict in Tigray had intensified rising fear that the humanitarian crisis and widespread atrocities that have left thousands dead, millions displaced, and hundreds of thousands of people hungry would only get worse. Peace was eventually reached, and now the country is in recovery mode. Africa's longest oil pipeline has taken shape in Niger. With a projected length of nearly 2,000 kilometers, including 1,250 kilometers in Niger itself, the country announced in early October that the pipeline would connect oil wells in the eastern region of Agadem with the Beninese port of Seme. The West African state became an oil producer in 2011. While the project was launched in 2019, the project was supposed to be completed by 2022, but the COVID-19 pandemic slowed it down. November, Africa-wide. UN experts condemn dehumanization of African migrants to Europe. After numerous people died attempting to cross from Morocco to Spain in June this year, UN rights experts on November 2nd criticized the lack of accountability for the stark dehumanization of African migrants. One of the worst border attempts in recent memory occurred on June 24th when some 2,000 people, predominantly Sudanese nationals, attempted to get into the Spanish enclave. Ghana announces a plan to buy oil with gold instead of dollars. Ghana, in late November, announced a plan to buy oil with gold instead of dollars. The barter of gold for oil will represent a major structural change in the country. Ghanaian Vice President Mahamadou Bawuah said that the move is meant to tackle dwindling foreign currency reserves coupled with demand for dollars by oil importers, which is weakening the local cedi and increasing living costs. The Vice President added that the decision, which is to be implemented as planned for the first quarter of 2023, will fundamentally change the balance of payments and significantly reduce the persistent depreciation of Ghanaian cedi. December, Morocco World Cup win cheered across Africa as continent gets its first semi-final spot. A 1-0 win against Portugal in the year's World Cup gave Morocco a coveted spot in the World Cup semi-finals, the first time a team from Africa has ever reached that stage of the tournament. Morocco was eventually defeated by France in the semi-finals, but was very impressive run for Africa. Can't wait what Africa will bring in the next World Cup. Ethiopia. Facebook sued for over $2 billion over Ethiopia violence. Facebook's algorithm helped fuel the viral spread of hate and violence during Ethiopia's civil war, according to a legal case filed in early December. Abraham Merek, the son of an Ethiopian academic shot dead after being attacked in a Facebook post, is among those bringing the case against Meta. They want a $2 billion fund for victims of hate on Facebook and changes to the platform's algorithm. Nigeria. Shell to pay millions of Nigerian farmers for oil damage. All giant Shell has agreed to pay $16 million to 4 Nigerian farmers and their communities to compensate for damage allegedly caused by pollution caused by leaks in its oil pipelines. The farmers said the leaks from underground oil pipelines had cost them their livelihoods by contaminating lands and waterways. The oil spills, in this case, happened from 2004 to 2007, and the payout follows a decision last year by a Dutch court that the Nigerian branch of Shell was responsible for the damage.
And this will be our last video for the year. We really appreciated you guys. New things coming next year. Please stay tuned. And yeah, thank you for watching. And remember, Africa is watching.
Thanks for watching. This was some highlights for the year. But remember, you can catch more African news in our channel. Please subscribe, follow, share, and like our video. It's the best way of supporting us. And remember, Africa is watching.